Time for Ask the Mayor on KWBE with Beatrice Mayor Bob Morgan. If you have a question today, give us a call, 228-5924. Hopefully we'll have somebody to be able to transmit the questions online into us here, but we'll see. If not, we'll hold the questions over for another program. Bob, we kind of dodged another winter bullet, kind of. I don't know what's going on, but it seems like everybody else in Nebraska gets snow, and
well,
yeah.
Very
Much.
Good morning, Doug.
Morning.
I guess we've been around and seen these predictions of big snowfalls, and I've always said that when they predict 1 to 3, we're going to get 5 to 8, and when they say we're going to get 5 to 12, we usually get kind of what we did. But thank goodness. I mean, I think the silver lining for this one is we got moisture.
Yeah.
So
about a quarter inch of rain out of it, so pretty good. But
might have to fight with some slick streets. Probably people slow down, and I know that when I went out to get some our driveway and our neighbor's driveway done, there's still some water underneath there, so the snow's a little heavier than what I would like to have for the powdered snow. But be careful as you're shoveling.
Those, if you drew a straight line between, I think, southwest Nebraska and the northeast part of the state, all along there, really heavy snow. I saw one total of 23 inches out by Callaway, Myrna, kind of dead middle of the state there. And snow is good, but that's a bit much.
That's a bit much. Our guys do a great job of getting streets cleared off. I think they'll probably keep the arterials open. We really didn't get a lot of snow as far as the residential areas, but I can tell you that 15 or 20 inches, it's going to take special equipment to get rid of that.
Yeah. We were discussing in the past 24 hours about, it started to ice over a little bit there, and that's probably one of the biggest problems for utility companies. That's the thing you don't like to see, but we kind of got lucky there, too, as well.
You did. I think, it kind of quit icing over. It went to snow. And I think the other thing that, again, we've been really fortunate with our snow is we haven't had a lot of wind. So those lines get swaying, and they snap.
It's supposed to pick up a little bit today, but maybe by then it'll melt off or something. But,
I'm hoping so.
Plentiful sand and salt left, it looks like, barring a huge storm the rest of the way out.
We're in good shape.
All right, yeah.
We're in very good shape there.
All right.
Yep.
I didn't really look that often as I passed by there, but I know the city runs a recycling site for Christmas trees at First and Ella. I think that was to go through January 15th, if I remember right.
If I remember right, it was, yes.
Very many people drop them off this year. Did you see, or was it popular? Or?
I don't know. To be real honest, Doug, I didn't look.
I didn't either, and I drive by there 100 times a day.
For years, we always had a real tree, and then a couple of years ago, we finally decided to do the artificial thing. So I didn't make my annual trip down there.
What happens to those? Those are chipped up and
mulched.
Do you use them in parks, or do people have the chance to get a supply of them?
We use them in the parks.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. You have a lot of trees to put them around and things like
we
that.
Do.
So,
we do.
Okay. The big action this past Monday night, a couple of resolutions on traffic direction changes were up before the city council, one on 7th Street between Ella and Monroe, and the other on 8th Street between Ella and Monroe. And, I kind of, when you go into things like that, you kind of just assume, well, they're going to do the same thing with both. You ended up with a split decision here. You had two-way travel on 8th and remain with one-way on 7th. Were you surprised at all on that? Or not?
I really was. I know that Councilman Fairbanks has wanted those two changed for an extended period of time, and so it does keep coming up. And, I think it was defeated a couple of times. It was real interesting when it talked about when people contacted a number of councilmen and contacted me. Their real focus was on 7th Street. It really was. It was one of those things that I guess I had not going through this before. I had not anticipated that. A lot of people believe that I think with the courthouse and the ballot boxes and that street is one way over going north of town seemed to be more popular to keep it one way than 8th Street. I'm probably an old traditionalist. Coming from Lincoln and Aurora, it was kind of nice to have something a little bit different with both of them being one way going each other. So now I'm going to have to get used to driving down 8th Street the right way.
Yeah. The thing is, too, and I admit to doing it in the past, when you get on 6th Street and, you're hitting every stoplight and you get to a busy time of the day, such as the lunch hour, pretty easy to jog over to 7th, and you don't have that where you can just get through the north part of town pretty easy.
And that was the sentiment. I mean, some people have kind of talked about, the safety issue of one-ways. And accidents, and the traffic committee never really saw a lot of accidents. Mm-hmm. I think the thing that I heard the most was, we want to go down 7th Street to get off of 6th Street, because 6th Street from 11 to 2, that's where most of our restaurants are for people to eat lunch. Mm-hmm. And so you find yourself bogged down as people are turning left and right. And if you go down 7th Street, you eliminate that. And so that, I think, was why a lot of people reached out.
And there have been some rear-end collisions on 6th Street there in that restaurant row there certain times of the day because people are just not paying attention, or they're looking down at their phone or something as they're driving, that type of thing. And, one of the things on 7th, and somebody had suggested, to kind of slow down the traffic, why don't you put up, say, a stop sign, I think north of 7th and Summit or somewhere in that
Somewhere in there.
I remember former Police Chief Bruce Lang saying on more than one occasion, though, if you want to create accidents, put up stop signs or lights, because that's where you'll get them. You won't get them in the middle of the block, but you'll get them where people are stopping. Do you kind of?
I can see that. I mean, I think, I think we all had that where you stop and you think you looked, mm-hmm. but all of a sudden here's a car.
Yeah.
And the car coming from the other direction isn't going to slow down. I mean, they're going to keep going because mm-hmm. they have the right of way. Mm-hmm. The hard part about the stop signs, and I think, it is something we'll look at for 7th Street, but I think the hard part about stop signs is the road is really designated as a thoroughfare to move traffic off of 6th Street as one way down 7th Street. And as such, if you put up a stop sign, you're somewhat defeating the purpose of that one-way street. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the hard part. I know that there was some councilmen that brought up speed, brought up parking. And so I really think that those two topics need to go back to the traffic committee, mm-hmm. and they can study that and give the council a recommendation before we do anything.
In your opinion, being that they both, 7th probably carries more traffic than 8th does, but they both carry a lot of traffic, is 35 just about right? Could you drop it to 25, or is that because of the nature of the street, maybe that would be creating more of a problem than 35?
I don't know. It was really interesting. I had a gentleman took a lot of time and wrote me a really good email, and he basically drove it at 35 and timed it, and drove it at 25 and timed it, and it was a matter of like 15 seconds difference. Yeah. And so from a time standpoint, it's not a big deal.
Yeah. Back to the thing about the stop signs for a moment, it seems like, and unfortunately I get to cover a lot of traffic accidents, and one of the things you probably hate to do the most, but it seems like many of the accidents, well, there was one just recently at 7th and Lincoln, just last week, but it seems like a lot of them have been at the stop sign on somewhere between 8th and 10th in that area, which looks like a fairly clear area. It's flat down there. You got good sight in each direction, so it's kind of hard to predict, if you do something, is that going to prevent something bad from happening?
Right. I mean, you talk about 7th and 8th Street, but if we look at all of our streets, mm-hmm. I mean, there's going to be issues in, here, there, and everywhere, and you just can't predict, and you can't take care of everything that you think is going to be an issue, because we also have to remember we're humans.
Yeah.
And we all make mistakes. And I think, you may or may not have seen this with all the accidents you've seen. We introduced a distractive device many years ago called the cell phone.
Yeah.
And there are people who grew up with the cell phone, and everybody sees it. The car might be weaving a little bit or slowing down and speeding up.
Yeah.
And sure enough, they're texting on the phone.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of cars are helped that because of, being able to just voice text through your phone. And I think
the
that's good.
Bluetooth thing has been a good thing.
It's been a really good thing, but we still have a lot of things that distract us when we're driving.
Yeah. It's amazing driving just down West Court Street. I every once in a while just try to look at the driver's face and eyes, and almost always, probably 50% of the cases, you see somebody looking down as they're driving, and not the right thing to do. But
it's not, but it's one of those things that technology has brought us, and we're gonna probably continue to see that.
Yeah. If you did nothing with speed, just left things the way they were, after the traffic committee might look at it, or what about there was a suggestion about why not just a little stepped up enforcement? Might that solve the problem, do you think?
And you know what, that might.
Yeah.
You know, I think
Of course, police have a lot to do. They have other things, other areas they got to cover too.
they do. And, you know, I think because these were one-ways and the focus was on these, and we had people who, on the council that wanted it changed, we kind of focused in on 7th and 8th Street. I would contend that we have speeding everywhere in certain places. It's not unique to 7th Street. And so I think enforcement is good. You know, again, I'm for anything that's going to be safer streets, but I think we have to be sensible and think it through.
Yeah. Already gotten a couple of questions from people about, well, when's the change made on 8th Street? It's not going to be for a while because of the winter.
Great
conditions.
question. It will be May 1st. We need time to get to, you know, spring. There'll definitely be some paints that'll have to be put down and rework signs. So we picked May 1st as the date to do that.
I guess I didn't really think of it, but is this the end of one-way discussion, or are there other potential one-ways that you might take a look at and see, hey, is there any support for two-way rather than one-way travel?
Well, I think you're kind of in a unique situation. We addressed 7th Street. Then if you look at Market and Ella, I think what you have to really think about is one of the major, I think, interests of the city council is to take a look at downtown revitalization. So I think until that is studied, I don't see a lot of, I mean, you don't want to change it and then the change it and then change it again.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the end of the discussion for now, at least as far as I'm concerned. There's 8 other councilmen that may or may not agree with that.
Yeah. And they are truck routes too.
They are.
Although those are voluntary, you can't force a truck driver to take them. But
You can't, but it sure has helped.
Yeah.
And again, that's part of, if the highway would get rerouted by a block, then you probably would have, you know, less of a need for that truck route.
Since you have both the Lincoln Corridor you're studying and the downtown area there, and I'm assuming the Lincoln Corridor thing might be addressed first because it's been in the mill longer, but when maybe is the next time you find out about whether downtown relocation of highway traffic would be possible? Is that something that's going to come up in the first half of the year, or maybe later on this year?
I think in the first half of the year, we'll do like we did at Lincoln Street. We will start with, you know, you have to have a study done. We've kind of addressed that everything you do, you got to have a study, and then you got to design, and the people that do the studies have really got a nice niche. But
It's good work if you can get it.
it's good work if you can get it, yeah. But, you know, the bottom line is, I think we've already got a contract. I'm not going to say with who, because I'm not sure. It's either Olson or JEO. And we'll start doing, again, the study of moving, you know, the highway over one block. And I think that study will probably start, well, as a matter of fact, I think there was a conference call that our city administrator had with I believe it was JEO yesterday. And so they'll start going over what they'll do. And we certainly will include the public like we did for Lincoln Street. There will be 2 public sessions. One will be kind of, you know, probably 2 or 3 months down the road where JEO has talked to people and started working on some design so they can at least have something that they can share. And then I think as they get closer to a final study report, they'll have a second public input session. And those are important to go to.
Yeah.
I found Lincoln Street's very interesting because I hadn't really, I've been, you know, before you're on the council and mayor, you sometimes go, oh, okay, that's nice. You know, but as I went there, I really appreciate the input that the public had.
Yeah, you got a pretty good turnout at those at Lincoln School.
We did,
Yeah.
you know, and I was happy with it, and some of them had some great ideas. Some of them, you know, change is hard for everybody.
Yeah.
And so, but for the most part, we had a lot of good input, and I think it really helped the study. And you're right, that study's done, and now we need to start figuring out how do we implement their changes. And we certainly don't want to do it where it's a major burden to taxpayers. So we'll take a look at how do we do it, you know, kind of like my old saying to my students at that point in time when I had a big project, how to eat an elephant. It's just one bite at a time.
Yeah. That's what you got to do. Mayor Bob Morgan with us today on Ask the Mayor. We'll have more in a moment. We're back on Ask the Mayor today with Mayor Bob Morgan. Early on in your mayoral term, you've already had a chance to make some appointments, reappointments. You had a couple to the Planning and Zoning Commission, one to the Citizens Advisory Review Committee as well.
You do. These appointments are going to come up. I think we have roughly 11 different committees and boards, and so you have people that have served for a long time and decided not to. Jim Franz was appointed to the Planning and Zoning Commission. I appreciate Jim because he was an alternate to the Planning and Zoning, and so he attended all the meetings. He knows exactly what's going on, and he said, hey, you know what, I'd like to have that appointment. And I said, absolutely, and he's going to do a great job. Von Wright's been on the Planning and Zoning, and so he was wanting to stay on, and so we got some experience that are coming back, and that's always good. And then Dan Kuntzman has been a citizen and resident of Beatrice for some time. Matter of fact, I think his company worked on Stake the Claim, Beatrice, and he approached and said, I really would like to get involved now that I'm retired in the city. And he said, I'm interested in Citizen Advisory Review Board. Very intelligent man. He'll do a good job. And so it's really kind of nice to introduce new blood into these committees.
And as a mayor, it must be nice to have a list of people who actually want to be on boards and commissions, because it is somewhat of a time commitment. I know it varies from one body to another, but
it is. The one thing that I would say, though, is, sometimes people take a look at the mayor and the city council and they think, oh, gee, that's the body that makes decisions, which it is. But if you think about all the committees and the boards we have, we've really done a pretty good job over the years, thanks to the other people before me, to put in shared governance. And shared governance is really important because that's part of the democratic process. And to eliminate those committees and boards, I think would be a very, very major mistake, because we need their input so we can react and know what other people are thinking, because shared governance is important.
Yeah. It's usually a kind of a routine thing, but farm leases that the council approved by consent agenda Monday night. So I was trying to remember, where is your farm ground that you lease out?
Oh, goodness.
The segments. Is most of it like off West Court in that area, or is it some in the...
Well, it varies. Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, we got the well fields.
That's right.
So you've got that area out there with there, and on the well fields, you have to be real careful when you lease that out of what they put on it, so you don't get nitrates into our water.
Yeah.
We've got some, down there. We also, around the airport, we have to have green space that can be put into crops, and so we have those spaces. So it just varies. It's really land that we basically have to have, that we put to use to make a little bit of money to put into the general fund.
That is competitive bid too, isn't it?
It absolutely is.
Okay, so farmers have a chance to, if they want to take care of it, submit. How many bids? Did you get much interest this year? Or
we always get interest. I can't tell you how many.
Okay, all right. One of the other things, rural workforce housing is an issue. I think there was, if I remember right, a grant application or on the consent agenda. What's your thought on kind of what direction that's headed? And are there areas of the city where this might be applicable if you get the money?
Well, yes. I think we've got some designated places for that. I think we asked for $1 million. It can be used for workforce housing, but it also can be used to put that in a place where you would renovate an area. We got a couple of areas that we're looking at that might help, maybe even the downtown. I really can't give you the specifics now, because once we get the grant, we can move forward on that. But I think there's some opportunities if we get this grant to really help solidify a couple of issues with one major building that's empty, and also add some housing.
Yeah. Between workforce housing and child care, two of the most important issues for communities in Nebraska right now.
They really are. I mean, that's the hard part right now. Yeah.
Okay. Bob Morgan with us. We'll wrap up Ask the Mayor next on KWBE. A few minutes left on Ask the Mayor today with Beatrice Mayor Bob Morgan. Of course, this year, first year, you've gone to an airport advisory board rather than airport authority board. And one of the things, just one action from Monday night's council meeting, the agreement with NDOT for airport repairs. I always thought that was handled by contract through the city. Is that different, or is this new?
The actual repair on the runways and taxiways are done by the Aeronautical Department of
Okay.
the Nebraska Department of Transportation, so they're done to the right specs and
I see.
and get them taken care of that way. So
Okay.
they've done it before, and it's just a nice arrangement.
Yeah. Going into the next biennial budget here, what's it going to be like this year with having an advisory board of the airport and budgeting for its operations? Do you think, is it going to be possible to step up support of the airport? Will it remain roughly the same, or is it too early to kind of talk about that, I guess?
Well, I think we're hoping. I think the advisory board will be really good, and I think it may give us some good opportunities to step up. I think that if you look at all the local airports, I didn't know this, but it's kind of the people that fly and have businesses and spray planes. There's quite a demand for hangar space, and so we have to look and see how we can make that airport as competitive or more competitive than our local airports around us.
Runway improvements have been made in the past few years, and I know those are pretty much in place. I think there was, an apron project?
Yeah,
I think
there's some apron projects, and it can be handled much the same way. Typically, that's a grant from the federal government, and it's like a 90-10 or an 80-20 split. And so, I think that's a good situation, a good place to be. So, I think if, in my opinion, it's going to operate very much like it does today, but maybe have even a little bit more oomph as part of the city. And I think it also has been really nice that, Dennis Schmidt is now a department head. And so he has access to resources that Diana may not have had.
Yeah. Airports tap FAA funding pretty often for big projects.
Right.
Grants, I think they're announced every year probably through the aeronautics department. And there was, going away from the authority board, one of the reasons you went away from that is because you weren't carrying any debt by that agency.
Correct.
Ahead of time. So that basically is the responsibility of the city now to carry that debt. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Is that coming up in the near future? Are there any thoughts of getting FAA support to accomplish some of these?
I think for the apron,
projects? The apron.
I think they're already working on that. And I think, if you look back, I think, the city helped the airport authority before it was an advisory board write the grants. So I don't see it happening any different than what it has in the past.
Yeah. Going into a 2-year budget, is that planning already starting, or is that for a little bit later on this year? I know that's a big process. You have to be able to look out 2 years and decide what all you're going to do in that time.
It hasn't started. The plans haven't been started at the council level. I'm sure it has at the administrative level. I think that everybody knows that it's coming up, and they're trying to get their projects lined up for the next 2 years and what that may cost. I think that's the one thing nice about it. You typically start at the department level and move up to the administrative level before it comes to the city council. I think the other thing that will help, at least from the council's perspective, is Monday night we will look at goals and interests of what all the councilmen have. I think certainly in preparing for the session, I've seen some really strong congruencies on the major areas that you would probably expect. And then I think after that, you have 8 people submit, and you've got a number of interests that are just one councilman or 2 councilmen. And so the list is really going to probably be broken into what the major interests are, what the major goals are that had the most interest by all the council members, and then you'll see all the list of other interests.
Yeah. Without necessarily spilling the beans, since the meeting is yet to come up on Monday night, we don't want to take away anybody's thunder or whatever. Of the suggestions you've seen so far, are any of them like brand new, things that maybe haven't been, thought about in a larger sense for a while now that might be worth pursuing?
I think there's a couple that are new. I think to me, I was surprised, and we'll go over that Monday night, the number of items that came up that we've talked about over the last 4 years that are already in progress. I mean, it's probably going to be no secret that the downtown revitalization is going to be on there. And if you think about that, we're starting that with a planning session. And so I think there are a number of projects or goals on that list. We'll probably make sure that we continue to go down that path, and that's important because if you think about it, any of the goals that we have on the list that has interest that have any traction, very few of them can be completed in this biennium budget. There might be a couple on there that don't have necessary budget implications that might be able to if it's an interest people want. But on the other side of the coin, this helps plan that 2-year budget because some of those could take 4 years or longer.
Yeah. I know it's a planning session for the city council, you and administration, but say you get any attendance from the public. Is this something where, say, anybody's got a great idea out there on something to work on, they can suggest it too?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Might be somebody out there that knows of a quality of life improvement or something that
Absolutely.
might make a difference.
We'll certainly listen to anybody's idea.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Following that meeting, we'll kind of condense it into what, short, intermediate, long term, or how do you do that? And how do you go from there?
Well, I think you take a look at, first of all, the goals that have, like I said, congruencies and jointed together, and those are the ones we certainly want to move on. I think when you look at all the laundry list of interests, I think, again, there, it just depends on how much interest there is.
Yeah.
Some might decide to pull it. Some might not, fit really where we're headed at this point in time. And so I think those are things that we'll look at over the next 2 or 3 years.
Okay. Meeting 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock?
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock, okay. Mayor, well, thanks for coming in today. We'll see you Monday night then.
All right. Thank you.